Jackson Daly, and I'm an intern with the East Texas War and Memory Project. On behalf of my fellow interns, thank you for joining us on our second presentation of the War and Memory Lecture Series. Today we are proud to host U.S. Army veteran Arlen Butler, a native of Quinlan, Texas, and a veteran of World War II. Mr. Butler joined the Army in 1940 and completed basic training at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. He completed commando training and was originally destined for Japan, but the Army instead decided to change his mission and shipped him to Europe for the D-Day invasion. Butler fought across France and into Germany, ultimately earning a Purple Heart, Bronze Star, a Victory Medal, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. Mr. Butler is joined on stage by our moderator, Courtney Crumpton, a sophomore sociology and history double major. Following the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. Please use the index cards you have received walking in to write questions you wish to ask Mr. Butler, and then pass them to the end of the aisle where the baskets are located. We'll do our best to get all questions answered. Again, thank you for coming, and now we'll turn it over to Courtney and Mr. Butler.
You gonna give him the microphone back? First of all, I want to thank you for joining us today. My first question for you is, what was life like growing up in Quinlan during the Great Depression? You're on. It's on. You're good. Yes, it's on.
Well, it was kind of, actually there wasn't too many people down there back then, but you lived more out in the country than you did in town. We didn't get to go to town a lot like you do nowadays. You can go to town nearly every day. We only went to town about once a month, and when we did go to town, it was more or less to buy groceries, and that was it. Or in the fall of the year, we'd go, if we picked a bale of cotton during the week, we'd go maybe on a Saturday to the cotton gin and have the cotton gin. Then we would go back in the morning till we picked another bale of cotton, and when you run out of cotton, then you go maybe once a year, or once a month, or maybe once every 2 or 3 months.
What did you do when you weren't in school or doing chores on the farm?
School?
When you weren't in school, when you weren't in class, or what was your hobbies?
Well, my hobby was either fishing or going rabbit hunting or something like that, because I was out in the country.
Okay, tell us about your time in the Civilian Conservation Corps camp.
The Conservation Corps was, they take us out in the deserted parts of the country where there was hardly nobody. And what you did is you went out and built ledges to keep the soil from washing away, or building roads for the Indians so they could go to the powwow. And that was more or less what we did in the Soil Conservation Corps.
And why did you join the CC?
Soil Conservation Corps? Well, back in 1939, there was no jobs. And at that time, I was a teenager. And not only that, I was kind of wanting to get out on my own, so I joined the Soil Conservation Corps and went to New Mexico. And that's where I run into a lot of Indians and a lot of rattlesnakes, let me tell you.
What inspired you to enlist in the Army?
Well, the Soil Conservation Corps was somewhat on the Army deal, but what they did was they paid me like $8 a month, and the rest of my money went home. And I got to the point where that $8 wasn't enough money, so I said, well, if I join the Army, I'll get all of my money, and I won't have to send any home unless I absolutely want to. So I joined the Army and got away from the CC camp because of the fact that I was only getting $8 a month.
Tell us a little bit about basic training.
Basic training is you learn how to march, and you also learn about your rifle. You each and every part when you're putting it together. And we had to learn all of the officers at the White House. Your congressmen, your senators, the president, the generals. You had to memorize all of those, so whenever it come time for you to pass, you had to go, you marched, and then they'd ask you a bunch of questions, what have you, and you had to pass that in order to be able to be sent to a regular Army company then.
How tough was your drill sergeant? How tough was your drill sergeant?
Well, I wouldn't say he was tough, but we got up around 6 o'clock in the morning, about 7:30 we was out, and we was out till about 7:30 at night time. And believe it or not, today, I think it's about 16 weeks that you have to take for your Army basic training. They put it to us, and we had to finish and pass in 4 weeks, so you can figure out how much stuff they shot at us each day. It was just constant, all the time. So you had to really be on your toes, or otherwise you'd forget some of them, you wouldn't be able to pass. So you go to a base, and when you went to a regular company, then you had freedom to go to town or do whatever you wanted to on the weekend. But in basic, you didn't go until you passed your basic training.
What did you do on the weekends?
Well, they had a nice park down there in San Antonio. They got what's called the Breckenridge Zoo down there. They got a lot of animals and stuff. Not only that, at the gate where you went into the zoo, they had about a 12 by 12 concrete slab out there, and it had a jukebox. And back then, there's when the boy from Company B, the bugle boy from Company B, and several of them come out, and that's when they learned how to do the jitterbug.
How would you describe your first experience with the 23rd Infantry in the Louisiana maneuvers?
Oh boy. When we went down to Louisiana, it was in July and August, the hottest part of the year. And you go marching on a 10-mile, on a 10-mile hike down there in Louisiana with that humidity like it is and everything, and the temperature. You couldn't drink very much water, because if you drank very much water, you'd pass out. So I learned that when I was in the CC camp, not to drink too much water and how to march. Not only that, when I was younger before I joined that CC camp, believe it or not, I lived down where Lake Kawakon is at. And on Saturdays, I used to come up here to Greenville to see a double feature show. By the time the double feature show was over, it's later in the evening than it is right now. So when you went down here on Wesley Street to catch a ride, there was no ride. So what I did is I started out walking. I'd walk all the way to Quinlan and walk all the way home, which is 26 miles from here to my house. So when I joined the Army, I was already used to them long walks, and so the long hikes didn't really bother me like it did a lot of the others.
Can you explain exactly what maneuvers were in the military?
Well, maneuvers is when you got maybe A company over here and B company over here, and you got C company and D company or F company or whatever. What we did is we would have ribbons of one color on, and they would have a different color ribbon on. And the ones with the different color ribbons than what we had, they were our enemies. So in other words, we had our deal attacking them or making them like we was attacking them, and so that's what was called maneuvers.
Tell us about your journey from the U.S. to Europe.
My last trip to Europe?
Well, your journey, on the ship to Europe, what did you do? How did you pass the time?
Oh, you know about when we went over for the invasion?
Yes.
Well, a lot of the guys played poker, blackjack, first one thing, nothing like that. That's the only thing we had to pass time with during the day. Sometimes at night, once in a great while, maybe twice a week, they'd show a movie, but that was about it. That's what was. Now that was our entertainment, but we had other things that happened along the way.
Had you ever been on a boat before then?
No.
How did your buddies handle the trip?
Well, some of them got sick on the ship, and if you're around somebody else that gets sick, half the time it's gonna make you sick because you can't get away from them. They just want to kind of cling to you.
Now, when you arrived in Northern Ireland in 1943, did you receive more training there?
When we got over to Northern Ireland, we taken commando training and obstacles. We had obstacle courses that we had to go over, and we take what's called judo and commando training because if we went to Japan, actually they showed us how to use what we call a trench knife on how to slip up on somebody and cut their throat. So, but anyway, we take we take about between 6 and 7 months of what we call commando training.
How is that training different from what you received in the United States?
You better shoot that one.
How is commando training different from basic training in the United States?
Well, basic training, all you do is learn all the generals and the airplanes and stuff like that, and how to march and stuff like that. That was your basic training. But the commando training was a defense against an enemy which would be attacking you. But actually, commando training was only good in hand-to-hand fighting. That's the only time that commando training is good.
Describe for us the early days of June 1944.
Well, I'll start. We moved from Northern. When I take my commando training was in Northern Ireland. We left there in April, but on the third day of June, 1944, we was at Fort Smith. In other words, the southern part of England, which was Wales. Actually, it's Wales is what I'm trying to think of there. What they put us down, take us down and put us in a marshland area, which was barbed wire entanglement around us. And on the fourth day of June, we loaded on a ship to go across the channel. We got out about mid-wave, and around 11 o'clock at night, they called us, told us that we were going to hit the beach the next morning. Well, about an hour and a half later, they called us and got us all together and said, no, we're not going in tomorrow. Because the waves on the water, Eisenhower had called it off because the waves on the water was too big. And then on the 5th, about midday, they told us that Eisenhower had made up his mind he's going to go in on the 6th of June, and which we did.
What was it like landing in Normandy?
Well, landing, they had ET boats or landing barges that they pulled up beside the boat or the ship that you was on. You had to get on that, and they take you out about as far from here to the far side of the room over here to the shore, and then they could put you on a platform out there. And when you went off of that platform, the water was all the way up to your neck. So if you had to wade water and then to get ashore. And then once you got out there, there was some big bodies along the shoreline that you had to actually to get on the shore. You had to step over bodies to get on the shore.
Did you suffer any injuries while fighting?
You know what?
Did you suffer any injuries while fighting?
I went till the 26th of July, and we were making what was called the Normandy breakthrough over there, and we had went through a little town and got outside this town, and what happened, we come on to a place where a tree had fell down, and there was fresh dirt dug under this tree, and I felt like there was some Germans down in that hole. So I hollered, Achtung, coming to your hands at home. And a couple of Germans came out and we was taking the watches and stuff off of them. I was checking for booby traps. And while I was checking for a booby trap, about 25, maybe 30 feet from where I was at, a knee mortar, which was a little small 3-inch mortar, fell and exploded. And when it exploded, I got shrapnel in my right leg and in my foot.
Tell us about how you received medical attention and how long it took to recover.
Well, they sent me to, I had to walk from where I got wounded back ways about a mile and a half to where there was an ambulance. Got on the ambulance and rode to a field hospital. And once I got back to the field hospital, I was standing there in the hospital waiting because there was guys that got there was ahead of me. And by the time they got to me, I was leaning up against a pole in the tent. And when I went to move, I couldn't move. I fell flat on my face because my leg, my side is paralyzed. With the sword, it's kind of like paralyzed. I couldn't move. And so they got to me okay. That night, I spent the night there. And not too far, maybe a couple of miles from where we was at, they had another field hospital, and the Germans bombed that other hospital that night. But the next morning, they put me on a plane and shipped me over to England to a hospital over there where I got good treatment and everything over there.
How did you learn to walk again?
What happened is when the doctor come around and examined me, he told me that the shrapnel was right in where all the leaders and muscles and everything is at in my leg. And chances are, if they would try to operate on me, that they might cut one of the leaders or arteries in two and it would stop me from walking. But he said chances are that my leg was going to be paralyzed and I wasn't going to be able to walk on that leg anyway. So that night at 9 o'clock at night when they turned the lights out, I pulled myself over the edge of the bunk because I told myself this is not going to happen to me. It can't. I wasn't going to let it happen to me, so I pulled myself over the side of my bunk, pulled myself out of the bunk, and pulled myself down the edge of the bunk from one end to another until I got to where I could walk from where I got out of my bunk down to the end. And about 25 foot from there was where the shower and the restroom was at. And after about 3 weeks, I was able to get out of bed and go down to take a shower down in the hallway there a little way.
How soon did you return to duty following your injuries? Can you repeat it again?
Huh?
How soon did you return to duty following your injuries?
It was November before I got to return to my outfit. On the way back, they stopped in Paris because they didn't have any transportation going up at the time. They put me off in Paris to go up to the front, and I worked in the post office there in Paris until they had a truck going up to my outfit. And then when it did, I went up to my outfit up in St. Vith, Belgium. A lot of people maybe never heard of St. Vith, but that's the name of the town of St. Vith, Belgium, where my outfit was at. And from there, now that was in November. I got up to my outfit, I think somewhere around the 26th of November, a couple of days before Thanksgiving. I was supposed to, well I did, I went back to Antwerp, Belgium for Thanksgiving. And we got in there late in the evening, around 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'll say at night. The next morning, I woke up when everybody woke up. I was so sick, I couldn't get out of bed. I had about 104, I was running around 104 fever because for some reason I had tonsillitis. And my fever was so high, I got sick on everything. And they raised cane with me because I wouldn't get up and go eat. But anyway, that passed on.
When did the Battle of the Bulge begin for you?
After I got up there to St. Vith, Belgium, I was there about, I think a couple of weeks. We pulled out of St. Vid, Belgium, and went to a town called Sauerbracht, Belgium. And we was going to go up behind, go up and relieve the 28th Division, which was up on the, they were already up on the front line. We had a little bit of a rest period there in St. Vid. So when we got up there, we got up there in the afternoon. The next morning, along about 5 o'clock, we had a major, which was a battalion commander. I think nowadays they call them brigades instead of battalions. But anyway, he was hollering, "Get up, roll up your pack. We got to get out of here. The Germans are coming." Well, we could hear the artillery coming overhead, but we said, that's not the Germans, that's our own artillery. He said, "Well, they captured our artillery and they turned it on us. They're shooting our own artillery back at us." Anyway, we got up, rolled up our bedrolls and what have you, and they had some tanks outside out there. So I go out there and they put us on the tanks, and they had me on the lead tank, and I had my arm over the tank. And he said, "Now down the road down here a ways, there's probably some German tanks down there, so you better keep your eyes open and watch." We went down the road maybe 3/4 of a mile or maybe a mile, and there was a little place like a little store on the side of the road. And I saw one of the German tanks down there, which was a German Tiger, and I hollered, "Tiger!" Everybody went scattering every which way, and the tanks went off of the road. And we was there about an hour because they called for a TD, or TDs, which is called tank destroyers. We had to sit there and stay there and wait till those destroyers came up, and they destroyed those 2 German tanks. And then from there we went on maybe 3/4 of a mile or maybe a mile, and there was a little bit of a hill up there. And we stopped up there on that hill, and we dug in foxholes up there on the side of that hill. Down at the bottom of the hill, during the day, the Germans was coming up that a little valley like. And what happened is, earlier I had problem with a captain in the artillery outfit, so he said, "I'm going to let you use a telephone. You're going to be kind of like a liaison officer up on the front line." And anyway, when I'd see these German tanks coming, there was some trees back down the ways, and I'd wait till those German tanks got down there in those trees, and then I'd call for artillery, and the artillery wouldn't actually go in and hit the tanks. What it was doing is hitting up in the trees above them, and once it hit up in the trees above them, the shells would burst, and the shrapnel went downward. It didn't go up, it went down. For the simple fact is, if the artillery hits the ground, it's going to go upward. Excuse me. But when it hits up in the trees and it bursts up there, it comes downward. And when those guys got out of their tanks walking around out there, and that shrapnel come flying down, you know what happened. We left a few of them down there in that valley like down there.
Now, during your journey across Europe, did you ever encounter any POW camps?
Yeah. Now, after we got through with the Battle of the Bulge, I was some of the MPs back at regimental headquarters got wounded, and so they needed some men for MPs. And I'd been with the company a pretty good while. I would not accept any of their ratings. I told them I'd take PFC, and that's all I'd ever want to be. So they come and asked me if I'd go back to regimental headquarters as an MP. So I went back to regimental headquarters as an MP, and a town named a German town. Anyway, we liberated a couple of German towns. I got that information here in a little book that I got on the towns. If she'd give me a minute, I could get that book out and I could tell you probably the name of the town. And there was around maybe 7,000 or 8,000 guys. They weren't all American POWs in those prison camps. There's some French, some Polak, different nationalities. And I'm going to tell you, when you look at them, you get sick looking at them because they were Wasn't nothing but mostly skin and bones. This book that I got here, the outfit that I was with, it was formed in 1812, and I got a history from 1812 all the way up to 1945. So let me turn over here where I started at. Okay, it starts off in slow, painful hedgerow fighting. The regiment, I'm gonna read some of this out of here. Maybe it'll answer some of her questions that she was asking me there. Inched away, forward day after day against hard-fighting German paratroopers. Elements at St. George d'El, France, was the Hill 192. That's where I got wounded at when I was there at that hill. Were some of the bitterest up to August, where the organization German resistance in Normandy collapsed. We had a short recipe. The first one up to the town was interrupted by an overnight motor march of 210 miles to East Brest. Well, that's a different part, so let me go up here another one. Okay, what it was, the first ceremony of American troops on German soil was a 23rd Infantry parade in November, south of St. Vith, Major General W.M. Robinson, Division Commander, presented a declaration for heroism to officers and men of the regiment. On December the 12th, the regiment moved 30 miles north to the vicinity of Sauerbraten, Belgium, which I mentioned a minute ago. The Germans broke through on December the 16th, found all battalions of the 23rd Infantry fighting savagely in the line. The failure of the Germans to accomplish a penetration in the division sector, despite repeated tank and strong infantry attacks, upset the entire German plan of action to reach and cut off the vital supply net at Laïgue. The regiment stopped attack after a bloody attack. The action was summoned up by General Courtney Hodges, Commanding General of the U.S. First Army, who declared that the 2nd Division has done in the past 4 days will live forever in the history of the United States Army. During this period, the 13th and 23rd of January was attached to the 1st Division, and regiments fought under the most severe element conditions or climate conditions, and spearheaded a drive that broke the determined German resistance as the vital overall something passed cleared of the way. In other words, my outfit spearheaded the drive across Germany. And I'll get to the POW deal. I also got pictures here where we went, some of the towns in Germany. Armored thrust into St. Vis, Belgium. Sleet, rain, and bitter cold froze the men's clothes to their bodies as they struggled through waist-deep snow over rough terrain. The enemy forces, particularly the 8th Regiment, 3rd Panzer Division, was demolished. So heavily was enemy losses in men and material that the 8th Regiment ceased to exist as a fighting force. In other words, during that time, the Germans threw about 4 different divisions against us, and we annihilated every one of them that they threw against us. And eventually we broke through there and went up. That's when we liberated 2 POW towns, and we went up to Leipzig, Germany, which is the largest city in Germany. Then we went on from there. We went on up to the Malden River, which when we got up to the Malden River, we met the Russians up there, and some of those Russians were big guys. I hope none of you out there are Russian. Anyway, they come up, pat you on the back, me Ruski. But anyway, we stayed up there with the Russians one day, then we pulled out of there and went around a different way from the way where we was at, and we went into Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, where the war ended on the 8th day of May. And out of all of that time, we, like I said, we liberated several towns. We've taken over 30,000 prisoners, POWs, prisoners of war, and we walked somewhere around 1,645 miles from the time we left France till we got to St. Vis, Belgium. When we got to Czechoslovakia, where the war ended.
What was your reaction when you heard about the end of the war in Europe?
Well, like everybody else, I was happy, and we didn't have to carry a gun with us and be on the lookout for an enemy to shoot at us and what have you. The people in town was real happy. The people would run out and hug you and kiss you and pat you on the back, thanking us for liberating their country over there and what have you.
Now, what different kinds of cases did you work on as a military policeman?
What did I do?
What different kinds of cases did you work on as a military policeman?
You don't want me to tell it. We worked on several different kinds of cases as a MP. We had during the invasion, during the Battle of the Bulge and going across France, we had a lot of guys that was talked into leaving the front lines and go with the civilian people over there. They got them passports and what have you. And we had liberated a camp, and we had one woman that gave us a little bit of trouble. So what we did is the trouble that she got into, we had to put her in a dungeon. What we called a dungeon was just a little bitty place that only had a little bit of small light place in there. And anyway, we tried to investigate her to find out a lot of things that she did. But one morning we went to take her out of there to do a little investigation, and she said, "I don't want you to take me out of here." Well, why? Well, she said, "I was raped last night." I said, "What?" "Yeah," she said, "somebody raped me last night." I said, "It can't be because the place is locked and nobody has a key to get in there." So we told her we was going to do an investigation, and so what we did is we did a little investigation, but we went back and told her
we asked her questions about what the guy looked like, how big he was, and so forth and so on. And we told her, well, we're going to take you out of here and put you in another cell. Oh, no, don't do that, because he's coming back again tonight. I said, oh, boy. Anyway, I told her I didn't want to say that, but anyway, she hadn't been said. But that's some of the cases we worked on, and like I said, we had a lot of GIs that actually was talked into leaving the front line. They got passports. The Germans over there made them passports, or the Frenchmen, and we'd go in these towns and hunt, and had to hunt those guys down while they.
Well, you've spoken a little German and a little Russian while you were here today, but did you have any problems learning different languages while you were part of the police?
Well, I don't speak other languages, but I did learn when I wanted, when the war ended, there in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, they gave us a POW camp, and had 2,300 and something men, POWs, and they wanted to form a band, and I told them that they could form a band as long as they didn't have any Nazi music and what have you. And we had, I think it's 900 and something women also there at that camp. And what happened after we was there about 4 or 5 days, they went to cleaning up the town because there was rocks and stuff in the buildings where bombs had fell, and they wanted to clean up the streets and clean the town up. And so the officers would come over and want POWs to go and pick up this stuff and do some work there in town. So when they come and asked me to go and get them some prisoners, we had K rations in the Army, which had a little can of meat, a little package of hard crackers, I think about 4 pieces of candy and 4 cigarettes in that package. And the German people over there, they liked the candy. So what had happened when they wanted people to go work, or guys to go work out there in the street, I'd take one of those packages outside out there, and I'd get out there and I'd holler, Achtung, Achtung, who wanted the Arbeit? Who wanted the Arbeit? And here they come running up there in the bottom. In other words, I was asking them who wanted to work, and I was going to give them the K rations if they worked, and that's how I got volunteers to help clean up the town.
Now, how was your journey home to the United States from Europe?
I was, when the war, when it ended over there in Czechoslovakia, they shipped us down to France. Once we got down to France, since I wouldn't sign up for another enlistment in the Army, I wanted to get out and come home. So what they did is they shipped me over to another outfit, and they went off and left me over there in France. So I had to stay over there until they shipped some guys home, and they put us on a Liberty ship. And then when I came home, you know, the veterans have been talking about, well, nobody met us when we got off the ship, and we didn't have all these people dancing and all this. And we didn't have it either. Nobody met us at the ship. They didn't even know. I don't think they even knew we was coming. They had who is it who does the collecting of money and stuff? Oh, the Red Cross. The Red Cross workers met us down at the ship with the coffee and donuts. And you'd think that they would give us the coffee and donuts they want to charge us for. Really. And I said, no, I ain't paying for no coffee and donuts. If they can't give them to me, I don't want them. So that's the kind of reception we got when we got off of the ship in New York.
When and where were you discharged from the Army?
I was discharged, well, we left, when we got off the ship up there, they put us on a train, and I think taking us 3 days or 4 days to come from New York, all the way down to San Antonio, and then I got discharged on the 16th of August, 1945. And when I got, excuse me, when I got discharged from the Army, they had the American Legion over here and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I forget what else they had there. But anyway, I went over to the Veterans of Foreign Wars. They said that if you got wounded, you could go over and sign up. You might get a pension and you might not. But anyway, I went over and signed up, and about a couple of months later, well, I think it was in November, I got a letter from the Veterans of Foreign Wars that I'd been awarded a pension, $11 a month. That's what I was drawing when I got out of service.
Now, I just have one more question for you. Many people would consider you a hero for your service in World War II. How do you respond to that?
Well, I say I'm just another joke. I'm just a regular guy, but when a veteran comes to me and tells me he's got problems getting his compensation or benefits from the VA, I tell him who to go see, how to go about it, and I tell him, don't give up whatever you do if you file for compensation or asking for help. You gotta keep going and going, otherwise you're not gonna get it.
Okay, thank you for visiting with us today, and if we could get the audience's questions up here. One question, did the basic training actually prepare you for the real war?
No, not really. What they give you these books and tell you how to do this, how to do that. Would you believe after we hit the beach, those books went out the window because there wasn't nothing like what it said in the book.
And you talked about other things happening on the ship going over to Europe. You mentioned playing cards, seeing movies. What were the other things?
When we got about, I guess maybe halfway over, we run into a winter storm over there, and it was cold as I don't know what. When the water would splash up against the ship, it'd go up, and when it come down, it was ice. But after a couple of days out there, one day we got the bell started ringing, making a noise in the ship, and what it was, the Germans had some small submarines out there, and they were they were shooting torpedoes at us, but what they were actually shooting at was the oil tankers, because if they knocked those oil tanks out, that meant that they didn't get fuel and stuff to run the tanks and stuff over there to fight them. So they wasn't worried about us, they wanted to stop the oil from coming over there.
Did you ever have a one-on-one encounter with an enemy soldier? Like fighting?
No, not really. When you ask that, maybe I should answer this. When I was an MP, we had SS guys, which is supposed to be the worst and the meanest of the German men. We had one day, the captain told me to take him out and give him a 3rd degree. Well, what happened is he wouldn't answer none of my questions or anything. And what we did is, over there they got a lot of apples. They got apple orchards everywhere you go. That's where they make a lot of the champagne is out of apples. Anyway, I take it and shot an apple off on the top of his head up here, and he kind of shook him up a little bit. And then I had another one. He was talking about what happened is when I take commando training, they gave us a skull that went on our uniform, and it was almost like the skull that the Germans wore. And he was talking about, oh, you American SS, and he got to talking about how mean he was and all this kind of stuff. Well, he had this little braid deal on his hat up here, was made out of beads. Well, he made me so mad, believe it or not, I made him take that cap and take those beads off and put them in his mouth and chew them up and swallow them and tell me they were good. He did. He told me they were good, but I don't know what kind of consequences was afterwards, but he really made me mad.
What were your initial thoughts upon landing on the beach at Normandy?
Well, that's a good question. When you stop, or when you get off a boat like that and you're going ashore, you don't know whether you're going to be next or whether your buddy next to you is going to get killed or what. An incident happened when we were getting off of the ship. They pulled the boat up to the side of the ship, or the landing barge up the side of the ship, and we had a guy in our outfit, we called him Sleepy, because half the time he could stand still for 2 minutes and he'd be sound asleep. Anyway, the landing barge pulled up the side of the ship, and since the wind and the waves on the water was so bad, the ship, or the landing barge would come in and it move out. Come in and it move out. When it come in, I jumped on the boat, or the landing barge when it come in, and the guy behind me, he didn't realize the boat was going out, so he jumped out to get on the boat. He missed the boat. He went down. That's the last way I saw him. That was the end of Sleepy. But that happened to a lot of guys that didn't realize when the landing barge would come in next to the boat, you had to catch it when it come in and not when it's going out, because you don't know how fast it's going to move and whether you go. Plus, not only that, we had 90-something pounds of equipment, your rifle, full pack, hand grenades and stuff like that. So I don't care how good a swimmer you were, with 90-something pounds of equipment like that, the way it's fast don't do, you couldn't swim if you wanted to.
Did you expect what you were going to see and experience when you arrived?
No.
How old were you when you joined the Army?
I was 20 years old. Believe it or not, that was 73 years ago this month. 73 years ago this month. If I told you how old I was without you even having to ask me.
Did you receive any gifts or special compliments from the citizens that lived in the towns your unit liberated?
We didn't get any for liberated. What happened when I was there in Czechoslovakia, where we had the POWs, some of the citizens there in town would bring steaks and cakes and pies and stuff to give to the prisoners. And believe it or not, since we wasn't getting cakes and pies and stuff from the States, once in a while they got those, and sometimes they didn't get them.
Was the transition from soldier to civilian a difficult one when you got back to the United States? Do we need to repeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. Was the transition from soldier to civilian a difficult one when you arrived back in the United States?
Well, actually, somebody asked if it was a difficult. Actually, I didn't even tell anybody I'd been in service. For years, I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell what happened, who, or that I'd been wounded, and spent time in the hospital over there, or whatever. Nobody hardly ever asked about it. Well, if you went to apply for a job, when I got out of service, if you went to apply for a job, they never asked you, have you been in service or anything? The first thing they asked you, how old are you? And believe it or not, back in the 40s, if you were over 50 years of age and you went to apply for a job, you know what they told you? You're too old. But you can't tell them that nowadays. But they did. They would tell you you're too old. Because I know I've heard that more times than one.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you for visiting with us today, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. I told her anytime I can be of help to any of you towards whatever, if the government, if you were married to somebody or that was in service, or you got a relative in service and they're having any kind of problem with the Veterans Administration, I'm one of those guys that you can come and talk to, and I can tell you how to get around it, or what you have to do to get whatever you were trying to get. And I got pictures up here. I got a book here, which you will not find in a bookstore. It tells about the Battle of the Bulge. And in order to have gotten this book, you have had to have went to the Battle of the Bulge 50th commemorative celebration in St. Louis, Missouri in 1994. So that's how I got the book. Well, matter of fact is I went back to France for the D-Day 50th commemorative celebration in June, and also in December I went to St. Louis for the Battle of the Bulge commemorative. I went in with the very first ground troops to land on the beach in Normandy during the invasion, which I got pictures of my outfit walking on the beach there in Normandy on the 7th day of June. And I got a book here. This little bit here is about I think this is about the most commemorative deal. But I also got a picture of the most sought after picture of World War II. I said I had. I know I got it. Okay, this picture right here of my outfit was took by some photographer during World War II on June the 7th. So now, according to the book, we weren't supposed to have been there until the 2nd of June, but we were there during the actual. My outfit was one of the very first ground troops to hit the Omaha Beach during the invasion. I went to July, got wounded in July, went back to England, recuperated, came back, and I also went through the Battle of the Bulge. Very few GIs, well, I'm going to say very few, that's living today that went through both of those and still around. And I got a picture here of me in the cemetery over at Colville-Chamir, France in June of 1944 when I went back to France for the D-Day 50th commemorative celebration. I got a deal right here. I say a deal. This right here, you won't find very, very few GIs that got these during World War II. Or any wars for that, because I don't think they even give them out anymore. And I also got a picture of me. Believe it or not. When John Wayne and all those guys were making movies and what have you, dressed out like cowboys, I thought, well, hey, why not dress out like one? So I did, and I had a picture made. And 55 years 55 years after I got out of service, I found out that was entitled to the Bronze Star. Well, a lot of you go to the clinic here in Commerce, and Chevaliers, a lot of you probably know the Dr. Chevaliers here in here in Commerce. Well, Rick's brother at that time was a major, and I received the Bronze Star through the mail. I didn't want to just receive it through the mail. I wanted it to be presented to me like it's supposed to be. So I asked, I forget what Rick's brother's name is, but anyway, I asked him if he'd do the honor of presenting me with a Bronze Star. He said, yeah. Well, he said, this was, I think, on April or March or April. He said, wait till the 1st of June. He said, I'll be a full bird. I said, okay, that'd be fine with me. So when he came down to Greenville at the Veterans of Foreign Wars down there to present me with the Bronze Star, he said, oh, by the way, he said, I got a guest I'm going to bring with me. And what he did is, instead of him presenting me with a Bronze Star, he had a 1-star general who lived here in Commerce to come down and present me with a Bronze Star, which was 55 years after I got out of service. And as far as, I am the only veteran of foreign wars that actually had any kind of medal presented to me in the VFW post itself there in Greenville. I've had several things happen to me there in Greenville that some of the other GIs or ex-GIs never had done. I am the past, I'm going to say past because it don't exist anymore. In 1997, I formed the Northeast Texas Veterans Coalition, which some of you that was here during the time a few years back when they had the Veterans Visual Committee up here. I was on the Veterans Visual Committee here in Commerce for about 9 years. And anyway, I had the moving wall brought down to Quinlan, down to West Tawakoni. And after the moving wall left, we had some money left over. So we went and put in a Veterans Memorial down at West Tawakoni. Actually, it's West Tawakoni Veterans City Park down there in West Tawakoni. So if you ever go down there, I got some pictures here of the moving wall. Anyway, she asked about some of the things. It's got my name down here, a member of the Military Police Platoon, 23rd Infantry, has performed its duties in a most outstanding manner. In other words, he's talking about me. He helped maintain traffic under difficult and hazardous conditions, as well as collected and processed prisoners of war, in addition to maintaining order in civilian communities. It's signed by Lieutenant Colonel William Smith, the commanding officer of the regiment that I was in, and they gave me this. It's a certificate of what's called Certificate of Merit, which very few GIs ever got these. Has anybody got any more questions?
I want to
All right.
hit you with something else now.
Yeah, if before you guys all leave, we have refreshments, water, cookies over here. So if you guys want to help yourself to those, that would be great.
But first, we would like to.
First, we would like to thank you for coming.
No, we would like to present Mr. Arlen Butler with.
Okay, we'd like to present Mr. Butler with a certificate of appreciation for coming up here and talking to us today.
And for his service.
And for his service.
talk to, and I appreciate you a whole lot. And like I said, if I can help any of you, or if you want me to come back, I hope not to tell the same story again. But anyway, if need be, I'm here, okay? I thank you.